Fee fi fo fum. I smell the blood of a tarnished. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. Meet the fire giant. I'm Horizon Shield. Let's make this easy. As always, I'm doing this fight without summons or spirits, and without blocks or parries. If you choose to use them, that's alright, just means you have a different way to play the game. I'm doing this fight at level 51, with 2 plus 20 Lordshorn longswords because I like the weapons and the moveset that they bring. No other reason. I'm going to be using a full set of Godric's Knight gear for armor, and then for talismans, the Ritual Sword Talisman, the Star Scourge Heirloom, Winged Sword Insignia, and the Green Turtle Talisman. You can switch these up to suit your playstyle, but after a couple tries, I found that I liked this setup. Fight the way that you want to. I'm just a guy on the internet trying to help out a few people. So what can the fire giant actually do? Well, he has 2 phases interrupted by a cutscene at roughly 50% health. Before the cutscene, he can use his feet and a few simple fire attacks. After the transition though, he does physical damage with his arms and then can use all of his flame attacks coming from the mouth on his chest. To kick things off, there is the avalanche attack that throws a wave of snow at you. As he places the plate vertically in the snow, he grabs it with both hands and lifts it, sending a wave of snow at the player. To dodge, just roll through the attack as it gets closer. It's pretty fast, and there's a little bit of leniency with the iframes. I don't recommend staying on your horse to try to dodge it. It's not going to end well for you. Alternatively, there is the possibility of you running behind the plate if he does it when you're too close. Use your best judgment if you can get behind him, or just roll through it if you need to dodge. One of his gap closing attacks is the running smash. This one is telegraphed by the giant holding the plate next to the ground with his other arm raised. As he charges forward, he's going to bring the plate over his head and then slam it down on the ground, trying to crush you with it. There's a couple ways to dodge the attack. If you're far enough away, you can just keep running away. Easy as that. Or you can dodge as he starts to bring the plate down. Do note that as with all of his other plate attacks, it's very slow, so try not to dodge too early. He also has a regular leap attack. He launches himself into the air and then comes down trying to smash you with the plate. The easiest way to dodge this is to roll through it. The timing for the roll is after his feet hit the ground. It's a little funny, he just lands and then smashes it regularly. So roll as his feet hit the ground. You should be just fine. One of his combat attacks is the plate swing. He has a few variations of this attack. The first will be a horizontal sweep. He holds the plate out to the side and then does a very slow sweep with the plate. Because the attack is so slow, be sure not to dodge too early. Make sure you're seeing the plate moving and it's kind of relatively close to you before you start to dodge, but you can simply just roll through it. Another of the plate attacks is the vertical slam. This one is very similar in the telegraph to the horizontal sweep. He'll simply hold the plate out to the side and then bring it towards you to try to smash you, except this time it's vertical when he smashes. He can do up to 3 swings in this attack. Don't worry, the timing for it's all very similar. You can roll just after he starts to swing it and you should be okay. Next up is the plate block. This means that he's going to be holding the shield with both hands and then slamming it down directly in front of him. The plate is actually a solid object, so you can't run through it. The timing for it is pretty generous, as with most of the attacks. Dodge as he starts to bring it down. If you're too close to him to be able to see it, you can judge the telegraph by his legs and his upper arms as well. You should be able to roll through it just fine. If you're on the other side of the plate, feel free to get a couple swings in, but don't feel like you have to. Next up, we have the plate slam. This shows the giant lifting one leg and holding the plate with both hands over his head. As he brings his foot down, he will smash the plate in front of him. To dodge this attack, it's pretty easy just to walk behind him as he's lifting his foot. Just make sure you're not getting too far in front of him, otherwise you'll get hit by the plate as it drops. Next up is the retreating sweep. You'll see this attack after you get behind him and he wants to get some distance. It's very similar to the horizontal sweep. The giant holds the plate out to the side and does a slow arc in front of him. To dodge the attack, make sure you're not trying to dodge too early and dodge after he starts to swing it. It's very easy to see because he gets some distance before he actually starts to do it. Shockingly, the giant can also just stomp on your face. He has several variations of this attack where he can do 1 to 3 stomps. I'm not going to separate these out because I don't feel like it's worth it. The telegraph for this attack is him going to be raising his right foot first. He will never raise his left one first, don't even worry about it. So when you see the right foot raise, know that he's going to be doing a couple of stomps. It depends on your positioning, the number of stomps that he does. So to dodge, Just roll as he starts to lower his foot, you should be fine. There's a lot of generosity with the actual timing. Next up we have his lovely roll. Every so often he'll roll away from you to get a little bit of distance and switch up his moves that he's going to be doing. He does this in both phases. The telegraph for it is him going to be leaning slightly one way and then grabbing shield with both hands while rolling forward and dodging. The second phase, it's very similar. He's going to lean one side and then roll his entire body. You can dodge through this attack. You aren't meant to be doing damage during this attack, so just kind of run towards him if you feel comfortable, or if you really wanted to close the distance faster, jump on the horse and get going. If you're doing the smart thing and attacking the giant's weak foot, after the brace breaks, he'll be at roughly 90% health. He will roll away and then do an animation of him grabbing flame out of his stomach. This will allow him to start casting all of his flame spells. You'll recognize most of them as they are actually player spells, so we're going to go through them. To kick it off, there is the Giant's Flame Take Thee, or the fireball. This is a fast-moving projectile shot from the hands of the giant. In the second phase, he can shoot two, one from each hand. I've only found one way to dodge this consistently. If you roll just before it gets to you, you actually have enough time to recover and roll for the second one as well. And of course, as always, if you're on your horse, you can just keep riding away and get underneath him. You will actually miss this attack if you get too close to him as you're shooting him, because they can't go behind him, thankfully. Next up is the Flame of the Fell God, or the Fire Orb attack. This attack just spawns an orb that slowly tracks the player. If it gets too close, the orb will flash and then emit a noise before exploding. To dodge this, you're going to need to trigger the actual orb explosion and then sprint directly away. I recommend rolling at the last second before it explodes to get a little bit of extra distance as well. The flame area is slightly larger than the distance you can run before it explodes, so you may end up getting hit by the fire that you run over, but it's not too bad. In the second phase, the dodge is going to be the exact same, but now you have to dodge two of them at once. You can trigger them both at the same time if you want, or do them one at a time. It depends on the variation of his attacks that he's doing and how much time you have. You can also trigger it with your horse and just keep running away. Next up, we have the wonderful Pillars of Fire, or Burn O Flame. Lighting his hands on fire before slamming them into the ground, patches of ground around him will randomly ignite before shooting into pillars of fire for a few seconds. There are a couple ways to dodge this. You can either just run out of range entirely, or stick close to him to do damage. Try not to go in front of his foot in the first phase, because he may just move you into the flame spout. In the second phase, his arms are the weak spot, so try to get next to either one of them. Both of them are weak points, so just try to take advantage of it. Flame, Fall Upon Them, or the Volcano of Fire. Take your pick. This attack has the giant bending backwards with the face pointing towards the sky. He then shoots 3 rounds of rocks into the air, with the third one being significantly longer. The rocks will land on the ground around you and then explode afterwards, so try not to get yourself pinned between his legs or right behind him if you can avoid it. This does leave him open for quite a bit of attack if you choose to do so. You can dodge this attack by getting on Torrent and running directly away if you aren't feeling comfortable with getting close to him. Otherwise, try to get next to his leg and do some damage. Be careful of the rocks falling directly next to you because they do explode. However, you can roll through the explosions if you want, but the timing can be a little funny if you're not used to it. Surge O Flame is the continuous vomit of fire directly in front of him. The telegraph for this attack is the giant leaning back, with the face on his stomach starting to glow with fire. He will lean forward and then shoot fire directly in front of him in a fairly straight line wherever he's facing. The easiest way to dodge this attack is to jump on Torrent and run away. Be careful because the flame will actually bounce off of objects in the way of it. So, it can bounce off the high ground or trees that are in between you and him. So that means the rebound of the fire can actually do damage to you. When you get too close and hitting him too often, he has a flame deterrent attack. There are 2 variations of it, but they're very similar. The first one has him hunched over the ground, grabbing the top of his mouth, and then lifting it up, and then shooting flames straight at the ground. The second one is after the elbow drop, and then he will ignite the mouth on his chest, and then shoot it in the very similar manner. Both of these attacks cover the majority of his body, so your best bet is going to be to run away. As soon as you start to see the telegraph, I advise moving, because if you stick around, you're going to get hurt, and this one does a lot of damage. Now that the giant no longer has any legs, he uses his upper body to attack you. To kick it off, we have the elbow drop. This attack is telegraphed by him leaning to one side and then pulling both of his arms up mostly above his head. This is preparing his elbow to drop on you. This animation is pretty slow and there's a lot of time to move around. To dodge, you have a couple of options. You can either roll through the smash itself, or you can get out of range either to the sides or just run directly away from him. But do note his body is large, so try not to run the Prometheus way of straight away. He also has a right-handed smash. Generally, when you're too far from him, this one is going to be telegraphed by him pulling his right arm back before smashing it down directly in front of him. He can lead to a second smash if you are still in front of him. This one will lift both arms up and then smash them down. The dodge for this attack is as the arm comes down. This attack leaves him open for a good couple swings if you're able to take advantage of it. Crazy enough, he can use his left hand as well. There's two different attacks here. One of them is a simple smash with the palm of his hand. The other one brings his forearm down on your face. Both of them are fairly simple to dodge. You just need to roll through it as you start to see it come towards you. Same with just about every other attack. They are fairly slow, but when he drops his palm on top of you, he can also follow up with his other hand to try to swipe across the ground as well. Be careful of the follow-up. If the worst happens and we get hit, when can we heal? Well, obviously the fire giant does a ton of damage. So if you need to heal, definitely do it. Don't try to tough it out. There are plenty of times in this fight where you can just walk away and then use your flask. Just make sure that he's not going to throw a fireball at you, and you'll be just fine. Majority of his attacks leave a long enough opening to be able to heal instead of attack. It's just up to you. Use your best judgment, and it should be pretty easy. Alright, so how do we bring it together to finish this fight? Well, this fight isn't terribly difficult in and of itself. He is a giant character, and obviously he suffers from all the flaws that regular giants do. All of his attacks are incredibly slow, so you don't really have to worry too much. They telegraph themselves very well. It's just the fact they hit like trucks. So as I come into this fight, I've actually done this flawlessly once before. It's just, I didn't like how that fight turned out. It ended up with me on a horse chasing him down about 95% of the time. So I wanted to go ahead and redo it and show it a slightly different perspective of not really using the horse, but chasing him around on foot. But unfortunately, I did not get lucky in this fight at all. He uses combinations of attacks that are meant to push you away just repeatedly, and I had a very difficult time getting close to him. However, on the bright side, this fight actually does show a very good way of not necessarily just closing the gap, but dodging his attacks while trying to get close to him. You'll see, actually, I think every single attack in this fight, it's a very good example of bringing everything together. You'll notice as I hesitate for several of his attacks, I'm not sure if it's actually a vulnerable spot or if I'm going to have to dodge again. So I pull back on a lot of the fire attacks just because the pillars are unpredictable and I'm very cautious at this point because the fight's easy. You just have to draw it out a little bit longer. And he repeatedly does the flame pillars attacks and pushes me away because it either surrounds the weak point itself or is surrounding me and I can't move. It's actually incredibly unlucky, and I'm actually a little bit surprised. Something you need to keep in mind about this fight is that you'll probably be fighting the terrain just as much as him. This arena is terrible. Not in the sense that there's not enough room for you to dodge or anything like that, but he himself will jump up on the rocks and basically become unhittable at certain points. So you actually have to fight that more than almost anything else in the fight. I never struggle with the arena nearly as much as this one with this fight. It's just crazy. After you get into the second phase, he'll usually start it off with a flame pillar attack. However, it can change up a little bit. So this second phase, the flame pillars are more numerous. They aren't necessarily more difficult to dodge, but they can definitely trap you significantly easier. He can also follow up with another attack that may or may not just trap you and just kill you instantly. Happened actually once while trying to record this version of the fight. So it's entirely up to you how you wanted to play this. When he starts doing the fire orbs, you have to be careful to not lose track of them, especially in the second phase, because after you blow up the first one, you're usually going to have to run away to dodge the second. Use it to your advantage, and just don't get hit. Be more concerned about dodging the orbs than nearly anything else, because the orbs will just knock you on your butt. He will always present an opening at some point. You just have to kind of wait it out. My favorites to hit him in the second phase are when he actually does the physical attacks. So when he tries to do the hand smashes or even like a swipe or something like that. And especially for the elbow drop as well. They're all just very vulnerable attacks, so it makes it very easy to do. The downside of the second phase is that he rolls every 3 seconds. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not really. He rolls so much. It's probably going to be about half your fight here is just chasing him down. And one of the reasons I did the second fight again, or the second fight in the first place, is because I used the horse too much in the first one, because I was literally just chasing him around, swinging at him as he rolled away. And I didn't want to show that. Unfortunately, there's not really a way to get around it. So I end up using the horse eventually, but I try my best to avoid it. And same as before, fire orbs, just pop one of them, run towards them, get a swing in, and dodge the second one. Fire orbs may be my least favorite attack in this entire fight, just because of the fact that the patches of ground that they set on fire are wider than the actual area of the explosion, and they can just spawn underneath you even if you dodge it perfectly. I've run into that a couple times. I'm not sure if I dodged too soon or what happened, but it's one of the most annoying things that I've encountered in the game so far. I always prefer to go above his head and try to swing at his upper arm whenever he does the elbow drop, just because, yes, you can get in his face. Yes, it does do a little bit more damage, but he can also do the flame deterrent attack and just knock you on your butt if you aren't catching onto it quick enough. But if you kind of stand in front of him a bit, most of his attacks are going to be the physical ones, so you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. The fire orbs are definitely one of his favorite attacks in this entire fight. You'll get used to them pretty quickly. If you're ever struggling with them, you can just use your horse, summon him real quick, pop him, and run away. Or any of the other fire attacks, actually. If you're just far enough away and he's just spamming things, just jump on the horse and just run. There's no real reason to not do it. So the only thing you really need to watch out for in the second phase is like the fire flame torrent attack, the fire whip. Because that bounces off of things and it can really mess you up. Even if you try to dodge it perfectly, it just won't let you. So this last 10% or so is always the most concerning because I try very hard not to get hit in the last second. And it's always one of those interesting things where I try not to take advantage of attacks that I otherwise would at any other point in the fight leading up to it. So there may be a few attacks I could have gotten a swing or two more. I'm just more concerned about not dying immediately. One thing that the fire giant will teach you is patience. Yes, he has a ton of health, but that's just another boss for you. Eventually you can kill him just by hitting his non-weak point as well, but we try our best and just move on to the fight. But congratulations on not dying and being turned into giant stew. If this was helpful, feel free to like and subscribe to see me break down the rest of the bosses in Elden Ring. Until next time, happy hunting.